Hi everyone, I'm Jane. Welcome to Yoga Compass. In this video, we're going to talk about downward dog. It's a really common pose that you'll be asked to do often during a yoga class. If you're doing a flow class or a vinyasa class, downward dog is a staple that we use to move through to other positions. But if you've never done yoga before, downward dog is a challenging pose and something that can be quite hard if you're struggling with your flexibility, your mobility, and need to build some strength. And that's what yoga is all about. So let's have a look at how we can support you in your downward dog. So first things off, I'm going to do a downward dog. And the way that we get into downward dog is through tabletop. So in our tabletop, we're going to use our hands, going to be nice and open on the mat. We can do what we call jam jar, which is draw our pinkies around so that they're closer to the outside of the mat and our thumbs are facing more up. And what that does is draw our elbows so that they're in a little bit more. We want to make sure that our wrists are under our shoulders and that our knees are under our hips. Then we want to think about pulling in our bandhas, so pulling in our pelvic floor, drawing that in, pulling in our navel to our backbone. So we are really connecting with our core. And we're making a start. Flat back. Tucking our toes, I'm going to draw my hips backwards and then lift my knees off the ground. And as I lift my knees, I'm bringing my head down. Now you'll notice that my knees are still very, very bent. For some people, this is a fantastic dog, and this may be where you start your downward dog. What we're trying to do is make sure that our torso is lengthened and strong, but I'm keeping my knees quite bent, and I'm letting my head dangle between my elbows. Now, if I have it in me, I can draw my knees a little bit straighter, pull my heels to the mat, push up that little bit higher. And this is probably our classic downward dog. But for many, many of us, when we start our yoga journey, this sort of dog is not accessible. So let's see what we can do to make any dog more accessible to us. So the first thing we can do is use props. And I love to use props to help my students and to help you get the best out of your yoga. So blocks can be fantastic. So I recommend have a couple of blocks at home. Buy yourself a couple of foam ones. They are fantastic. They don't need to be the heavy cork ones at all. Today, I'm also going to be using a chair to show you how we can support in the chair. And I also have a bolster, which we will be using. So let's start out. If you've got a student if you are a student who's come to yoga to try and find a bit more strength, to try and find a bit more flexibility, you haven't moved for a while and you're worried about your mobility, a great place to start is using a chair. So I place the chair on my mat, and that just makes sure that my chair is not going to slide. Then I'm going to move my feet perhaps back a little bit, bend my knees, and then bring myself forward. So here I'm getting a good bit of the stretch that you would see when we're stretching in the downward dog on the floor. And this is enabling me to really enjoy part of what downward dog can do for us is this beautiful stretch in the torso. But I don't have any major weight on my hands. So my arms are stretched, but they're not doing a massive amount of support. There's a bit of support there. I can have my knees nice and bent, and I can pull my bottom still up to the sky. And that means it's going to give me a good bit of pressure on my hamstrings. And perhaps that's all I need at the moment. Another alternative is to actually put your elbows on the chair. And again, Bring yourself back, draw those hips up, bend those knees, and find that downward dog position again. This is a little bit different in the feeling than it was before. The weight is going through different parts. Again, it's supported, and it's a great starting point if you have never done yoga before and you're building that strength and building your mobility. Coming back down to the floor, another support. If I grab my bolster, particularly if you feel you'll have problematic wrists and you're worried about their weight traveling through your wrists and then being able to support you, a good solid bolster and putting your elbows again on that bolster and then lifting yourself up into your downward dog. This is actually a really fabulous way to find dog when you're starting out. Again, bending my knees and pushing myself up, my hips up. You can also rest your head on this, which means you can find some of the restfulness of the pose as well. We're still getting a lot of that beautiful straightened back. And coming back down again. And another option again. It's just a couple of blocks. All of these things are about raising ourselves up a little bit more off the floor. And as we raise ourselves off the floor, we take a little bit of pressure from the arms and the shoulders. So this time around, from my tabletop, pushing my hips up and into my downward dog. And again, you should be able to see I can still have those bent knees and push my hips up a little bit higher and then bring my knees back and draw my feet to the mat. So this can be really good for students who have sore wrists and are a bit worried, and this is amazing, just the difference it makes in regards to how much weight you feel you're drawing through your wrists. Come back down again. Now when you're at the very start of your journey, the getting up and using your legs may be a struggle as well, and that's absolutely okay. So one of the things you might like to do is to do some practice when you start your downward dog, and if you feel like you've got a good bit of strength in your torso and it's the back end that you're worried about, don't go up that high. You can push yourself back and just draw your knees off the ground and then put them back down again. Draw your knees off the ground and put them back down again. And you could do 5 of these, just practicing it. Perhaps drawing yourself up a little bit higher and then putting them back down. Drawing yourself up a bit higher and putting them back down again. And you'll notice I'm drawing my hips back first as I push up. So doing that rather than going all the way into your dog and holding the dog, bringing your hips up and down may be a really effective tool to strengthen your legs a little bit more and to find that pose. One last thing that you can do that could be very helpful for students is to actually bring the bolster to the back of your mat and to use your bolster as a way to push your heels into, to actually give yourself support in that manner. So again, finding our tabletop. And for this one, you may have to adjust your stance a little bit. Pushing my hips up, pushing myself back. And now I've got something to push into. So I can find those straight legs that I might have been struggling with, and I can push my hips down and push my heels into the bolster. You might find that you want to lengthen the pose a little bit more, and then to bring yourself down. So this can also be a really fantastic tool to help you draw your hips up and push your heels down and have something to push into. So That's downward dog with lots of different supports. By all means, that's not all the possible supports that we could use, but that gives you an idea of what's available and what can really help you to get the best out of your dog. Thanks for listening to me today. Hopefully I'll see you on the mat soon.